Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine
What's
a light
your story?
on incredible impact. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight Sessions. My name is Avital, and today we have Alona Yorkshire, who is the Deputy Executive Director of the Adult Skills Center, also known as TASC. How are you today?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's great to have you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I am here in Los Angeles, California. I'm originally from Moscow, Russia. I've been here since I was about 12. I grew up here and finished my bachelor's in psychology and then my master's in special education with applied behavior analysis, and became what's known here as a BCBA. It's a board certified behavior analyst, which is kind of like a therapist, but specifically working with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities on, socially significant behaviors. All of my clients, have one form of a disability or another. We primarily work with adults over the age of 21. I also have, I'm a foster parent here in Los Angeles. It's a huge need here, so I also work with kiddos in that capacity. Most kids in foster care have a disability and need accommodations in one way or another. So I'm used to working, with the school districts on various accommodations for my kids. And it's connected to the Adult Skills Center, to TASC, but we also have a therapeutic farm sanctuary that we run with about 30 rescued animals. So
Wow.
Pretty busy over here.
Yeah, definitely. So on that topic of TASC, can you tell us a little bit more about the organization?
So the organization has been around since '87, so about 35 years this year, and it was started by my mentor, Kenneth Lane. He did pass away last year, but he was basically a superhero to all of us. He started the organization with 12 clients who really had nowhere else to go as a day service. So a day service here in California basically is kind of like an adult school for people with disabilities, and it's evolved over the years, and we'll talk about that in a second. But essentially 12 people day service, and it's now evolved to serve, I want to say we serve about 400 people. We have about 320 staff. Many of our services are pretty intensive, so one-to-one, one staff to one client, supporting them in a variety of areas of their life. So everything from just in-home supports with, just being able to stay in their own homes, with whatever disability that they're living with, to employment, so on-the-job supports, to really intensive mental health and behavioral services from our clinical department. We have, that's sort of our specialty. There's many agencies that do what we do, but we specifically specialize in those individuals that pretty much no one else can serve because of their intensive needs.
Definitely. So I know you definitely gave us like a really broad overview, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the specific services that you offer.
Okay.
I think that might be interesting.
Sure. So again, originally it started out as a day service, which again in California there's quite a shift of what that looks like. So to give you a brief history lesson in that, around the civil rights movement is when individuals with disabilities also started getting some rights with having special education in schools, so that children could attend school, in a regular school, not, be sent away. And that's what it used to be, is if someone was born with any type of disability, unless their family could afford, services in the home, which most people can't, the children were sent away to what's called a developmental center here, which is essentially an institution. And that was basically the case for forever until really just right now. We in California, we started deinstitutionalizing about 25 years ago, and
only 25 years.
Yeah, it's and then actually when TASC became sort of accidentally, we stumbled into being, the main agency to support individuals that have super intensive needs, specifically mental health and behavioral, and some pretty intensive medical needs, and it's all together. And it's because we had at the time about 80 people left across the state of California that were still institutionalized. And because they were so intensive and so the cases needed so many different types of support, there really wasn't anything in the community to be able to support them, to be able to live in the community and not live in an institution, because again, the institutions are closing, and that wasn't an option anymore, that we essentially designed one of the first programs that was able to support to that level of need and be successful. So that's called our Specialized Therapeutic Services program, and one of the hallmarks of all of our programs is that they're completely integrated. They're completely accessible. So what that means is when people came out of institutions originally, they went into community services, but the community services themselves were basically mini institutions. So a day service was a building where the individuals got dropped off in the morning, picked up in the afternoon. No one ever saw them. They were essentially segregated in that building. So segregation is still very real for a lot of our population. And so what we're moving towards now that we've taken people out of big institutions and into little institutions in the community is now getting rid of the little institutions and serving people completely in the community with the general public, not hidden away somewhere. And what does that look like? What are those intensive supports that someone needs to be able to support them enough to be able to be safe, doing all the things that me and you do, and not be behind closed doors, essentially. So that's kind of the services.
Yeah, that's really incredible. I mean, I'm from California originally, but I had no idea that history of the disability community in California and how long it took to really stop institutionalizing people. So that's really, really a shocking thing to hear, but so important to share that and to make sure that people know. 25 years ago is 1998.
Yeah,
something like that. 97.
Yep.
I mean, that's not.
And even that now, like people, if you still lived here, you hear a lot of people comment on like, yeah, I see a lot more people with disabilities, out and about, and it's like, yeah, that's what's happening right now, and it's just that, like, I guess it's mind-boggling to most people that, like, it's live, it's happening now. This is when we're actually taking the steps to fully desegregate individuals with disabilities. People think of segregation as something that is long gone, but for our community, it definitely isn't. And it's a lot of, because of, what you specialize in is obviously there wasn't the supports to ensure that people had, again, the accessibility to be able to participate in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that really just blew my mind, I have to say. That's just really absolutely, mind-boggling. But to move on to the next question, are there any specific accomplishments, either at TASC specifically during your time there or prior to your time there, that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I mean, the program that I'm talking about is definitely our biggest accomplishment, I would say. But in general, TASC is very legislatively active. So none of this happens without funding. And the funding comes from, obviously, the government. And so we have been very successful in the advocacy efforts over the past few years to ensure that the funding exists for these programs, because ultimately, I mean, you can have the best programs, but if there's no funding, there's no program. So I think that's a really big deal. I think TASC stands apart because we're always trying really innovative things. It's something that our founder was always open. Like, there was nothing he said no to, really. I mean, if it made sense, we would just do it. And so I can talk about, something that's important to me, which is the animal sanctuary that I mentioned earlier. Like, one day we were doing therapy for that, really intensive program. And, we had, the regular types of therapies, and then we introduced music and art therapy, because a lot of our individuals don't use language to communicate. So sitting across a therapist in a room at an office isn't really going to do much therapeutically. So we introduced, alternative, more accessible therapies such as music and art. And we always wanted to do animal assisted therapies because there's just a lot of data now and clinical studies about the efficacy of that. And so we were always kind of picking up, stray dogs and stuff around our office. There was always dogs and cats and birds in our offices. And so one day I, asked basically if this is something that we can formalize. And I was willing, and, I'm pretty happy that I got the opportunity to take care of the farm. And so we started this little rescue farm, and now we have occupational therapy, all sorts of mental health therapies. Many of our therapists went and we supported them to get extra certifications in things like gardening therapies. So doing therapy while your hands are dirty and you're planting things. Other therapists that were interested specifically in how what you eat affects your mental health. Obviously, we all know that now. And so, doing very specific nutritional targeted things, not specifically for weight or diabetes, things like that we traditionally would use a nutritionist for, but specifically for mental health. Like, how does what you're putting into your body make you feel every day? And so things like that we've just been really innovative and creative with, I think is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think innovative really is the key word to what you guys are doing, being able to be, to try different things, see what works, also use research to back up these new initiatives. I think that's really, really amazing that you're able to do that. This next question is one that we do ask everybody, but we always get a different answer. So I really would love to hear what accessibility means to you.
It means equality, I guess. That's the main thing, is being able to access the same resources and opportunities, whether it be, again, reading a website or physically getting into a building, or having access to the same jobs and opportunities, the same educational opportunities, whatever it may be. So equality and being able to achieve the same types of things as anyone else around you, whether it is because of a disability or, your gender or sex or whatever it may be. I mean, I often tell people, like, again, the civil rights, it was not only, it was a lot of different populations. It was women, it was people of color, it was people with disabilities. And so we're still, as we all know, we're still not anywhere near done with women's rights, with rights of, again, people of color, people with different sexual orientations. And so it's, just moving it forward little by little, and we'll get there, I think. I'm pretty optimistic.
So we definitely will get there eventually. Hopefully sooner rather than later. If you had one message to the business community, what would that be?
Well, since we're specifically to the business community, I would say for us at least, and I think for, I guess, all of the, the different populations that I just mentioned, it's the last goalpost of accessibility is equal employment. And I don't think most people think of it that way, but people with disabilities, for example, right now in March of this coming year, it's going to be illegal to pay them below minimum wage. People have no idea that even still exists. So individuals with disabilities are still making sub-minimum wage, making sometimes 25 cents for a whole days of work. And that's, people have no idea that that's happening. It's only becoming illegal this coming March. And so when you work and can contribute, to your society, you have that value that's equal to those around you. And not only that, but when you work with someone who's maybe completely different than you, and you're there every day with them side by side, and again, you're equal, you're going to really, have a hard time, most likely being, prejudiced against them because you see them, you know them. When you get to know someone, you really, it's really hard to then, discriminate against them. And so I think that employment is really the last, kind of goalpost for all of these communities is equal employment. And so introducing, diversity, and inclusion training in your workforce, making sure that you're hiring equitably, all of those things will literally contribute to an equal society. So employers really have a huge, huge role to play.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to connect. I know when I heard that fact for the first time about how people with disabilities can make less than minimum wage, I know my mind was blown, and I'm sure that any of our listeners who are hearing that for the first time will also be very enraged and happy that there's a change, but also hopefully empowered to want to change even more, to want to change society even more. So thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to connect with us. It really was a great conversation, and we look forward to the next one.
Thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time to do this.
Of course.
All right, bye.
Bye.